Namaste. This is Yoga Therapy Podcast, and I'm your host, Shira Cohen, yoga teacher, yoga therapist, and Ayurvedic wellness educator. In these conversations with experts in the field of yoga therapy, you'll find out what it is and how it can help you and your loved ones to reclaim well-being. We'll touch on physical as well as mental health, physiology, emotions, women's health, spiritual well-being, goddesses, and self-development in the fullest sense. Listening to another story can change ours, so thank you for showing up, and let's begin this journey together. So, hello everyone, we're back after a holiday, and today we are joined by this amazing woman that I've wanted to speak to for ages. I've read her big fat book called Yoni Shakti. She is an amazing writer, a journalist. She's a yoga teacher trainer and a yoga therapist, and of course a mother of three. So welcome, Uma Dinsmore-Tuli. I'm so glad to be speaking to you.
Oh, thank you, Shira, for inviting me here. I'm honored to be amongst your wonderful guests.
Yes.
I'm delighted to be here. Yes.
Yes, lovely to meet you. So we've been chatting a lot and first checking in with each other, which is a very yogic thing to do. So today you wanted to talk about the power of rest and its place in yoga therapy. So I think that's a really important point that we can be about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nidra Shakti, the power of rest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like to start just with your story? Because that's what I usually ask people. How did you get to yoga? And
okay.
How did it go?
I can do you a short story and a long story. I met yoga as a very young child. Mm-hmm. I was about 4 or 5 years old in London watching the TV with my mum. And there was a program called Yoga for Health.
Wow.
Not just yoga, but like a yoga therapy program called Yoga for Health with Richard Hittleman.
Oh.
Who actually wrote quite a number of quite good yoga books, actually, if anyone's familiar with them. And it was to teach yourself, how to teach yoga. And I started doing yoga with my mum. And she had enthusiasms, and that enthusiasm for her waned. But fortunately for me, she had bought the book of the TV series.
Oh, wow.
So I had this book called Yoga for Health with Richard Hittleman, and it had all the pictures of the asana. And it also had teachings on vegetarianism, philosophy, meditation, breath, pranayama, so I loved it. I had a sort of obsession with this book, and it was an easy, big, open book with lots of pictures. And so as a child, I loved it. And also little kids can do loads of yoga. I don't know if you've ever taught kids yoga, but I taught kids yoga. So it was always part of my life. I used to go up to my bedroom and do this stuff. And I didn't even think and I used to meditate, and I had experiences as a child on pilgrimage. My grandmother was very religious, so I got to meet the Virgin Mary and Fatima, and so I had this up to the age of 9. So my childhood was very not through like my parents were, they were busy working, they were working people, but I had this thing and so I thought it was my thing, And it wasn't until I got to college in London, and actually, there was a yoga, it's a long story, but I had met yoga teachers in my village where I grew up, and I was impressed by the yoga teacher. She was a rather glamorous lady with a mohair sweater and white hair, and she was gorgeous, but I started taking classes when I went to London, and then I realized, of course, I was everybody's worst student, because I was like, I've been doing this since I was 4, so I would do everything my own way. So I wasn't very good at following instructions, and eventually I did a yoga teacher training course. There's a whole story. It's a wonderful, magical story of how I my teacher gave me the money he raised money for me to go and train as a yoga teacher. Oh. It's an amazing story, actually, but I won't go. But when I came back, I had enough money saved from this gift I'd been given to train as a yoga therapist, because what I saw
into it
pretty much straight away, because I could see immediately, I'd been doing yoga all that time, all my life. I was in my sort of late 20s by that point, 26. And so when I started teaching people, whatever I'd learned off my yoga teacher training course in Canada, actually, I went, was okay. But then people would show up and they'd have like, they'd have a fibroid, or they'd have a cyst, or they'd be pregnant, and they'd be like, well, this doesn't work for me. So I was working with my students to figure out, it's the classic story, isn't it? Ways that the yoga could help the people who were showing up in the classes that I'd been told to teach. My teacher he said, you have to go and train because I don't want to teach the class anymore. So he gave it to me and my friend. And so that I went to the Yoga Biomedical Trust in London. Whilst I was a student, I was doing a PhD at the University of London, and I was doing because I like to do a lot of things at once, I did my Yoga Biomedical Trust yoga therapy diploma at the same time. Yeah. And my special interests at that time were women's health, because by the time I finished the diploma, I was pregnant with my first child. So it all happened at once, that kind of really busy time in your late 20s. So I was busy like getting family, getting married, getting pregnant, trying to finish my PhD and my yoga therapy diploma at the same time. So I tried to, I focused, my special interest was things like pubic symphysis dysfunction and pregnancy. So, and then things happened so that's what I did. And I did another yoga therapy diploma, another training on another pregnancy. Both the times I did it, I was pregnant. So I've been teaching pregnancy yoga, therapeutic pregnancy yoga for over 18 years now. And yoga therapy. Yeah. So that's the story. And I just eventually began to realize that I wasn't actually interested in being a yoga instructor. It was so bossy and military. Line everyone up and tell them what to do. And it's just not my style. I'm like, you need this and you need that and you need the other. And so I was fortunate that one of my very first yoga students was in fact a pregnant woman my first pregnancy, who then she was an acupuncturist. So we worked with Chinese medicine and acupuncture and all that. And she became rather well known, actually. She wrote a book called The Baby Making Bible later, Emma Cannon. Wow. So Emma Cannon kind of came into my life, and I was like, oh, she's got other healing modes. And we needed to create a program for her as a pregnant woman. And that opened the floodgates, because like, well, actually, it's not just pregnant women, is it? No. It's menstruating women and postnatal ones and menopausal beings and it's everybody else too. And so that's why I decided I wasn't really interested in being a yoga teacher anymore. And in fact, I'm a bit allergic to that term. So I'm very proud to be a yoga therapist and a member of the International Association of Yoga Therapists. And I got CIAWT because I'd done all these other courses. So that's the story. Okay. I love it. And so I see people one-to-one, and I integrate other healing modes like tarot and yoga nidra is always, I won't say always, nearly always the first practice that I teach. Not the last, the first.
You mean in a session?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, that's very
in group sessions, in individual sessions, in sort of symptom specific sessions. Nearly always I begin with yoga nidra. Yes.
Okay.
Why? Because people won't hurt themselves if they're rested. Your rested being is a wise awareness. And if you come in and start moving before you've rested, you will move in ways that are harmful, likely to. I mean, if you're young and fit, maybe not. But like for most folk, I find that being held in that space, sometimes I do it another way, but as a general rule, I will share the nidra up front, like the apéritif.
Oh, c'est bon. Okay, that's very interesting. And is that obviously you're not just talking about the awareness that's created when we rest. There's also the actual physiological state that you're creating when people lie down and rest.
There's all of that, because we know as yoga therapists, we've got the five bodies. Yeah. So you get the physiology of being horizontal changes it. And not everybody can be horizontal on their back. There's lots of ways you can do it. But what happens is that will affect the energy in the body, it will affect your mental state, your capacity to all of the bodies, all of the kosha. So it affects your capacity to witness. And there's often, I believe, at the level of Vijnanamaya kosha, an intuitive wisdom which arises when we become still.
Yes.
And
I tried to do the same, but then sitting, I take people into those different layers because I don't want to move them to move their bodies until first they are attuned to their body.
Yeah. And a horizontal witness causes less harm than a vertical witness. Like if you're sat up,
you're more
you get a whole different experience of your intuitive wisdom than if you lie down.
It's more vulnerable, isn't it?
Yeah, you're also more secure because you're held by the earth. And I believe that one of the ways yoga therapy works is for us to reconnect to the rhythmic cycles of health.
Yes.
And that we actually mostly will do that better if we actually lie on the earth, preferably naked outside on the ground. You know, I mean,
no way.
Yeah, literally, because but you don't need to do that. You can lie on your yoga mat with all your clothes on, you know, here am I with all my sweaters and everything. But if people get horizontal, even for a short time, then I find that something very different happens to their awareness of what they need. And then they will tell me what it is that they need. They will know.
Okay. Can we just jump a little back? So you're talking about yoga nidra. Let's explain this for people who have no idea what yoga nidra is.
I love to do this. Yoga nidra literally means the sleep of yoga, or the yoga of sleep. Nidra is sleep. And so it's a sort of joke, you know, because the sleep of the yogas is to be awakened. But literally it's an effortless, usually horizontal meditation that happens on the edge of sleep. It's an actual meditation on the process of becoming aware of the cycles that bring us into rest. And because all healing rests in that rest, we become aware of the literally quantum healing capacity of rest. And so what you train to do with yoga nidra is to become aware of that power of rest. And it is an adaptogenic power, which means if you are tired and you lie down to do yoga nidra, you will fall asleep. And I never tell people not to fall asleep, because if that's what they need to do, they will do that. But if you are looking for insight, guidance, spiritual awakening, awareness of how to heal, if you're looking for bright ideas, those things will come too. Healing post-surgery, preparing for surgery, working with medicines that you need to take. Maybe you need to take some antibiotics, or you need to take some specific kind of medicine for your illness, whatever it is that's ailing you. You meditate in yoga nidra first, and then your body is in a resting, receptive state to take that medicine, and it will work better. So that's what yoga nidra is. And it looks like shavasana usually, but then you can do restorative yoga. So that's what yoga nidra is. And a lot of people are now very keen on yoga nidra because there's a lot of new books about yoga nidra, including mine and my husband's. But it's like the treasure at the bottom of the dress up box of all the things which are yoga. You know, people get out all the glitzy stuff and the crowns and the shiny stuff, and then there's this treasure in the bottom that most people only get to when they're really sick. They go, oh, I couldn't do my proper yoga practice, so all I could do is yoga nidra. And I'm like, and what happened? Well, I got better. So it's and I see very clearly that Nidra Shakti, which is the power of rest, resides within sleep, but it resides within yoga nidra. So we're accessing a very great power. And it is she actually is I've written an encyclopedia of yoga nidra, which has a huge chapter on Nidra Shakti as a goddess, Devi, yoga nidra Shakti Devi. Or Nidra Shakti Devi, or Yoga Nidra Devi, and she appears in many places in the South Asian traditions of like the Devi Mahatmya, and she's in the Mahabharata, and she's in the Ramayana, and she shows up, and she's the law. She's the natural law. She's Isn't that funny? So just
Yes.
when we got to the place where I was telling you, I said, so in some ways, I mean, not everybody sees her this way. And I have been vilified and humiliated and ridiculed at major Yoga Nidra conferences and say, oh yeah, Uma thinks Yoga Nidra is a goddess. I'm like, it's not just me that thinks that. The original structure of understanding Yoga Nidra was a structure that placed Yoga Nidra Devi, the goddess, in a place of power, such power that Vishnu, the sustainer of the known universe, falls asleep on his snake
because of her,
because she has him in her power.
Yes.
And the gods all have to play to her to get him out of sleep, because Brahma, the creative power, if you see it metaphorically, or the healing power, or what brings creative, new ideas and things in, has birthed, he's been ejaculated out of this lotus that comes out of Vishnu's belly button. There's the lotus. Brahma is under threat by all the demons. Madhu and Kadaiba come again, and he's singing to his mother, Ma, to the goddess, to save him. So you can see this as metaphor. So it's not my idea. Like, I'm
not your
deep
idea.
respect. Very ancient. They're not even, they're concepts, they're philosophical structures that put rest, the power of rest, as a key guardian of our creative capacity.
Yes.
And that every so often you need to put the sustaining energy, the energy that gets up and opens the shop and drives the taxi. And
that's what I wanted to get to. Yeah, I wanted to get to that, because I think that's really a big issue. We have there's such a great resistance towards rest, and we live in this culture that has shame connected to rest and relaxation and sleep even, and this is to do with cultural conditioning and beliefs and stigma. And I'm wondering, what do you think, because this is where I've gone into my book also about this subject, that it's so important to place this central theme of sleep and even decay and the fallow time, which is happening now. We're going into a fallow, basically, as human consciousness. And it's so important to regenerate. It's so important to realign, to again find what is important, what is the meaning of what we are doing, because there's only this drive to produce and be active and gain what? Where are we going? Why are we in such a hurry? To what ends, So what do you think the underlying drive is, that we cannot rest, that we do not want to accept or surrender to this tiredness, to this power of Shakti that says, sleep now, shut up?
Well, that would be a political answer.
Yes, I know. That's why
there is white supremacist, imperialist, capitalist, patriarchal structures that are invested only in the profit that is brought to the elite. That is the structure. That is the economic structure that is endeavoring to control and push for everybody never to go to sleep.
Yes.
Now, I come from England, like birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, right? And we know that pre-industrial sleep patterns all over the world, there are lots of studies of the pre-industrial sleep patterns of humans, right? Before electric light, before factories, and before shift work, and before like capitalism really got running, right? Yeah. And what would happen is that we would naturally sleep, when it got dark, sleep about 5-6 hours, probably wake up, make love, write poetry, stir the hops for making the beer, check on the chickens, visit a neighbor, and then go back to sleep. We would have a second sleep. It's called biphasic sleep. It was a very natural thing. There's also other naturally arising cycles, menstrual cycles, menopausal cycles, women's sexuality cycles. There's a whole lot of cycles, and none of these fit the capitalist model. They're inconvenient. Right? Especially if you've got your factory running and you want it to stay running, you need people to be working 8 hours straight, as if we're straight lines.
Yes, everything's
cyclical beings.
Yes.
So what the basic answer is that we have a culture which is, you can call grind culture, which is that you are only as good as the latest bit of work you've done. And that actually is designed to profit a tiny elite. It is racist, it is misogynist, and it is anti-life. And it is also a colonial power that took over the entire planet and would extract resources. So our energy as humans is extracted from us the same way that diamonds are extracted from the mines in South Africa and gold at great cost, detriment, human detriment. And those structures that it's so not how life on this planet is, that enormous structures of oppression had to be created in order to drive this profit. So like the slave trade and the oppression of women, and these things are all intersected, and sleep, and the fact that everybody of sleep problems and difficulties, because actually the way we have been trained in school, it's programming, and it's actually not how we are. And rested humans make wise decisions, know how to heal themselves, are much nicer to be with, are creative and connected. But it is not rested humans who are running this system. You only have to think about Margaret Thatcher, who hardly ever slept at all, to look at the carnage she did to the UK. And then you look at, are any of our leadership actually rested when they make decisions? They are not. They are tired, they are fractious, and they're part and a product of a system that we are all been inculcated in, that you, as you named it perfectly, to be ashamed of being tired. In fact, there's a badge of honor about being that you never sleep, that you're so busy that you're exhausted. So burnout is not a natural sort of cycle. Burnout happens because people don't sleep enough.
Yeah, or sleep like after the birth of my child, I just couldn't sleep more than 3 hours in one go, and that went on for 10 years or 8 years. I was exhausted. But yeah, I wanted to go back to something you said, which I found was so important, that this linear thing. I have a friend, so his wife was pregnant and the baby was due end of this month, but she was in Turkey. The doctor said, we'll plan your cesarean for the 10th, like this is done. And he was like, but I really wanted it to be natural. And I said, yes, but it's a business. It's a business. The doctor gets paid a lot of money for the surgery, which otherwise would happen naturally. He wouldn't be needed. And he knows at what time the baby's going to be out, where she could be busy for 3 days. It's so crazy. And he didn't even think about this, And he was like, that's what it is. It is a business. And I think it's really important to be that you have articulated it very, very clearly. And so are many people around the world. And I thoroughly recommend the work of Trisha Hersey, who runs an outfit called The Nap Ministry. She's very, very active on Instagram. She does a huge and marvelous job of teaching people about rest. But she has a new book coming out, and she presents rest as resistance. Yes, exactly.
It's a social justice issue. It's an anti-racist issue because if you look back in slavery times and plantations, if you rested, you were dead. It was dangerous to rest, and actually people would find ways of pockets of rest and sleep and naps to reaffirm humanity that we needed to rest. And so the ancestors, our ancestry. If you look back, you look at the ancestry in the plantations, you look at the ancestry in the factories. And in the domestic servants, that's where my roots come from. Like people worked themselves into very early graves. Our ancestors were exhausted. And everybody has been harmed by this, some much more than others. So I think that Trisha Hersey's work is of vital importance. There's a very moving podcast that she does on the For the Wild podcast. And Trisha, when she shows up For the Wild, it's a very moving, and it dovetails perfectly with any healing modality including yoga therapy, that has at its heart, what are we trying to do for people is make it so they don't need us, so that they rediscover, what are they discovering? The rhythms of their own healing. And the key rhythm is sleep. When we're sick, we need to rest.
When something heavy happens, we need to rest. When there's a big change, we need to rest. Yes.
Great. And you look at, when I talk about healing, I think of it in the broadest way. I mean, I work a lot with grief and anger, because I work with female humans. And so, I mean, everybody's grieving, but there's a lot of anger. But those big emotions, grief, anger, regret, they manifest in illnesses and exhaustion. And we need ways to allow people to express and connect to what they're feeling, and they need to be rested to do that. Everyone knows what that feeling of like you push and push and push and you finally get away on a holiday and then you get sick.
Yes.
It's a classic thing. Well, what I'm encouraging with yoga therapy is it's an opportunity in that peaceful, quiet space of the yoga therapy engagement and in the practices people do, to really listen in and feel the rhythms, and then they know, and then there's this embodied, intuitive knowing. And we as yoga therapists, that's how I see my job, is to affirm and amplify people's capacity to discover for themselves their own healing, like a resonance, like a rhythm, a groove they get in, and then it starts to spiral up. Because the burnout experience is that you get in the groove, but it's spiraling down. Yeah.
That's a really good way of putting it. And you say it so beautifully. Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been talking about this a very long time now. And I actually ran a yoga camp for 15 years. I mean, hopefully we maybe have it again in Avalon. And we started out that camp, and it was like all kinds of yoga, everybody welcome from dawn to dusk for 10 days on the land, right? And to begin with, and we had a beautiful big yurt and everything. And people, I'd say, we'll do yoga nidra when everyone arrives. We do yoga nidra every day. And then I was like, we need to do 2. And then next year was like, oh, we need to do 3. And eventually, like, people were like, what is this camp? People would show up 5 yoga nidras a day, 5 a day.
Wow.
So the schedule for it was first thing in the morning, little yoga nidra by the fireside. Then before you get to lunch, nidra before lunch. Obviously, after lunch, another nidra. That's 3. 1 in the middle of the afternoon. Everybody loved that one. And you do a middle and the afternoon one, like before supper, before dinner. And then 1 is a good night story before you go to bed. And you know what? It was the most harmonious camp, because you reset individually, but you reset collectively. Collective rest is such a thing. And I've been doing this for that camp. We began that. I've been running it since, for 15 years. Well, actually it'll be 17 years, because we've had 2 years of rest. For that. Everything is in a big container with all the briars growing around it. It's like Sleeping Beauty. You can't get in there. We've got to go in there with a machete, and because it's on the land.
Okay. Yeah. And I think it's important that you say that we all have the healing capacity within us, and it's just learning to find that state and resting in it long enough that we naturally find it by ourselves much more easy next time. It's like you're saying, you have to cut through the briars. We have to go through that jungle, create a path, and the more we walk that path, the easier it is to enter into that rest.
Absolutely. And so what happens with yoga nidra is that you have a form, you've got a technique, and so you practice. A lot of people do the same one over and over again, and you might have a special one that you do when you go to sleep, or I do first thing in the morning as my morning meditation. And so what then happens is your body remembers. So I did a little tiny rhythmic yoga nidra in rhyme, and it's called a rhythmic yoga nidra to remind me how to rest. And the rhythmic yoga nidra to remind me how to rest is like, oh, I know how to do this. I remember what it feels like. At some point and my message is like, at some point in everybody's life, every single human on the planet has fallen asleep. Have you ever met anyone who's never fallen asleep? No, they don't exist, right?
Dead.
They would be dead, right? That's the power of it. So if we've had that experience, what you're doing is saying it happens anyway. You've just got to notice it. And so the Nidra is a way to help you become familiar with that. And then there's obviously a whole world of like dream yoga and lucid dream and all those other things. But like just noticing as you fall asleep is like knowing that there's a gateway, and people walk past that gateway all the time. They're just so exhausted. Yeah. They're like, I put my head on the pillow and bang. I'm like, no, but what happened to get you into that resting state? Imagine if you knew what that was, you could do it anytime. I had to have a big tooth out the other day, and I was in the dentist chair, you know, on that state of rest. And bingo, didn't the tooth come out as easy as anything? I mean, it wasn't just me. I wasn't taking the tooth out, but like being in that rested state, stuff goes better. You've got some stressful travel you have to do, or you've got some difficult deadline, but you bring yourself to that place, you know, and whether the stress is healing or injury, or surgery or a life transition like menopause or grief or birth or something like that, or menstruation. So I use a lot of my work is around women's health and the health of the female reproductive system. And what I observe is that it transforms people's relationship to the menstrual cycle. If they learn to rest around the premenstruum, it's a call to slow down. And if you listen to that and you've got techniques, so I've created like whole courses that are like special yoga nidra for menstrual health.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it changes according to where you are in your cycle?
Yeah. We created a course called Yoni Shakti. It's an immersion course. It's a very nice little online course. And what happens is you have 6 yoga nidras. The first one is welcome to the cycle, and the last one is thank you. But each one is one of the stages of the menstrual cycle. So you can see it like a seasonal thing. You know, so the springtime is pre-ovulation. You've got an ovulation kind of nidra, which is summertime and it's all gorgeous. And then you've got an autumn nidra, which is like for you coming into the premenstruum. And you've got a bleeding nidra, which is the wintertime. And each one is different.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. And just talking about that falling asleep phase, I remember as a kid, I used to lie down when there was family parties, and I'd go into a quiet room, and you're still hearing everything and you're conscious, but at the same time you're in that deep restful state and you feel very safe and you're picking up on everything, but there's this kind of, I don't know, trancey, watery.
That is exactly. And that's exactly how Yoga Nidra works. One of the instructions I usually give is something like, you can hear the voice, but like in that situation, you're not really paying attention to what they're saying. You might hear a few juicy stories, but then you drop down. But the fact that you can hear there are people there is comforting, because you're not alone, but that you don't need to engage with them because they know you're tired and you've gone to sleep. Well, I used to fall asleep under tables, not because I was drunk, because I can't. Alcohol is not a good thing for me, right? But like in those situations, a lot of people have had those experiences. I know, traveling on trains, I often sleep really well because there's people around and I drop to sleep. Or for example, I once slept on a yoga retreat through an incredibly loud salsa party because I knew I liked the music, but I was tired. I didn't want to dance. So I lay down in my little yurt on the side of the pool, and they were, didn't we keep you awake? I said, no, you helped me sleep because I knew you were having a lovely time. I could hear everyone having it. And I was like, you hear the sounds and you just drop beneath them. Yeah. So with Yoga Nidra, you're kind of creating that scenario, a bit like being at the campfire where everybody's there, but the person holding the Nidra is watching to make sure your blanket doesn't catch fire or none of the bears come to get you. And literally that's what goes on out here where I am right now. But like, so what you've described is a very natural arising that's very healing and comforting. And you can create that in yoga therapy by having they lie down and listen, or create it with recordings, or in collective is nice. Yeah. But even on Zoom, I run like Nidra stuff on Zoom and everybody's there and we know where everyone is because everyone tells you. And it's a huge privilege to steward, to hold that space of rest and to watch people waking up at the end, Shira. And like they're transformed. Sometimes pain, I've seen it. Like I've been doing this work now for over, I've been 25 years, like I mean, my son's 23 and I was doing my yoga therapy diploma when I was pregnant with him, right? So that's how I measure it.
Yeah.
So, and what I have seen is this simplicity of the faces of the people who wake up and they say things like, oh, it doesn't hurt so bad. Or, you know what? I had a really big insight. Or, oh, that menstrual cramp, I can feel what she's doing, like a compassion. Because you have the space for the compassion, because you're able to rest. And it's not, and it's a special kind of rest. It's sacred.
Yes, sacred.
And I mean, I'm sure as you travel around the world, you can see people I could talk about rest a lot, like how people sleep differently, sleeping in public and all of that.
Yes, we will talk about the sleep. I have some questions. Yeah, but I just want to comment on what you just said. I love, it's the most fulfilling part of the lesson is I always finish with the yoga nidra, so 10, 15 minutes at the end of a class. And just the way people come into sitting is so different than when they came into the room.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the light on their faces or in their eyes. It's that softness, that and they smile. They really recognize it for themselves, the change, and they're so grateful. And it's just nice that they're walking out with that,
Yeah.
Especially so, magic.
Yeah, it's really nice. So often with the yoga therapy session, it's nice for them to walk out with that. But imagine if they begin with that. And that's one of the ingredients in the yoga therapy session is that you've just described so beautifully, the softness, the willing, the connection. And then you do a little sort of centering at the end. And then I usually record it. So they go out with it, or I do it on Zoom. And then they have that practice that's their practice. And it's usually, I do something called co-creative yoga nidra. So I'd say, hey, Shira, what words do you need to hear? What words do you need to hear? What would feel reassuring or nourishing? And it might help someone prepare for their surgery. It might help them recover from their surgery. It might help them deal with an ongoing problem or find a solution to something. And so it's their words.
Beautiful. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, and that takes a little bit of education because it means people need to know a little bit about, you can't do that first up because they're like, what do you mean my words? They're like, I've never done Nidra before. So that's why we have the Yoga Nidra Network and we've got 23 languages of free Yoga Nidras in 23 languages.
Wow.
Which I want the whole world to be able to rest in their mother tongue for free.
Okay.
All at the same time, then our problems would be over. We just slow the F down, humans. Will we just lie down and rest?
Yeah. Yeah.
You saw what happened during the pandemic. Like, the environment was really happy because people weren't rushing around.
Happy. The dogs were walking around in the forest going, this is great.
The dogs and the birds and the plants and the trees and the sky and the water. And everyone was happy because the humans were making less trouble. Yeah. Horizontal humans cause less harm.
Yes.
It's true.
Literally, yes.
Literally. I'm a very literal person. I'm very short-sighted. If stuff comes up, I see it and I say it. And I see horizontal humans, they don't cause harm.
No.
They're welcoming in healing. They're portals for healing.
Yeah.
Not just for themselves, but for the earth around them because they're not messing with it.
Yeah. Just one flashback I had talking about the beauty of humans. I did a Vipassana for 10 days. It was my first one. This was before I had my daughter. And during the Vipassana, I was like, this is a sect. This is horrible. I want to leave. But at the end, I was like, I'm going to do this every year. And when we were about to walk out the gate, I didn't know anyone who was there, but you felt them for the whole 10 days. You felt these energies. And then we got to the gate, we were about 10 people, and one guy got out his guitar and started playing because none of us wanted to leave. We had this special feeling. And then another guy came and started singing, and another girl started singing, and we just sat down. And all of a sudden, everyone, there was this collective thing again, got these lumps in their throat and tears in their eyes because you just realize the beauty of what it is to be human, to be conscious, to be creative, co-creators. It's pure.
And we're co-creating with humans.
Yeah.
And with all the other creatures.
Yes.
Because they're so happy when the humans are doing their human thing, because then humans can really be aware the reality of life on the planet is that we're all held by this web. And isn't yoga therapy like one of those little threads that gives us an incredible structure of intellectual understanding of the koshas and the gunas and the tattvas and the this and the chakras? And we've got this incredible gift from India, from South Asia, that is now so poised. It's so helpful for so many people. And that what you described there with the Vipassana thing is that actually, if you give people time and space, they will find that connection and they will realize the joy that there is just in the life of being and want to help each other. I actually, like, there is a goodness there, and what's the system we're in right now has done its very damnedest to eradicate any possibility for us to connect with those things, including, like, for the last few years with each other, for fear that we might be able to do something good on the planet, keep everyone apart and scared. You know, there's all that going on. But like, actually, yoga therapy is really about reconnection. Isn't that what yoga means in the first place? Like, it's literally reconnecting with your own wisdom by an awareness that we are part of all, and every breath. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So let's get back to deep rest. I wanted to ask, what are misconceptions about rest?
Well, what the big misconception is, it's a waste of time. What are you wasting your time for?
Yeah.
Like, all the big ideas, the inventions and the beautiful music and the poetry and they all come out of dream. Yeah, or visionary states, like, you'd name it, Einstein and everybody else who invented electricity and all of these things. So I'm a bit incoherent here because there are so many. It's so obvious to me that it is not a waste of time. It's where all the juice is, right?
Exactly.
So that's a big misconception. And there's also, you mentioned things like that it's shameful. And the idea that it's solid, I mean, it can be solitary. I think it's a very good collective act to do so. That's the big misconception, is that it's a waste of time. It's exactly the opposite. It is the source of all creative inspiration and deep healing, insight and wisdom. That's where I see it. We don't get those things when we're rushing around. No. We get those things. And how do we know where to go unless we rest and tune in? So I think that's the major misconception, and that covers everything.
Okay. Yes. And so what's the difference between rest and sleep, or yoga nidra kind of deep rest?
Okay, well, that's a good question, because fundamentally what you're doing in yoga nidra is you're becoming conscious of the sleep state. That's the difference. Whereas unconscious sleep, it's good for us, it's what we did, but you do spend an enormous amount of your time asleep on this planet, like possibly around 30 years or something if you lead a good long life. And so I think anyone who's got any wisdom to share about this, including the whole tradition of the Tibetan dream yoga people and all the folk who are working with sleep, including my wonderful colleague Charlie Morley, who wrote a beautiful book called Wake Up to Sleep and Dreams of Awakening. That's he's like, he and everyone else who's working in this field, including the Nidra people, can see that something like yoga nidra cultivates our conscious awareness of a naturally arising phenomenon. And a lot of yoga is like that too, like conscious awareness of naturally arising breaths. And then we do them on purpose. Like what Dolly Parton used to say, is like, you be yourself, you find out who you are, and then you do it on purpose. Like yoga nidra is sleeping on purpose, like knowing that you're going to do it. You have a little ritual, you have your little blanket, you lay down. And the difference with that is that when you're conscious of it, then it becomes like a superpower or like a siddhi. And that's at the heart of Yoni Shakti as well. Like, most people born in some kind of female body are going to menstruate at some time. Not everybody, but and it's just going to happen. And it doesn't mean that it's like a great superpower in itself. It's a naturally arising phenomenon. But if you become conscious of it, Then it's a source of visionary insight. It's a massive feedback system, a biofeedback system for the body. Ditto menopause. Like you can just like hurtle through it and pretend like it's not happening, or you can pay attention to what's arising, and then you learn what you need to be well. So if you pay attention to what happens when you sleep, you notice initially, so I'd say that's the difference between yoga nidra. It's consciously hovering on that space of sleep and turning it into your meditation. It's the focus of the meditation is the process of being, possibly falling asleep. That's fine, it's good. But being in that liminal space, it's a liminal experience. So you're conscious of the liminal, and most humans are taught that liminal spaces aren't very safe. You know, like airports and train stations and places you have to get through. Like it's like the difference in yoga nidra made easy. I use this metaphor of like, I know you've booked into a hotel, right? And you go into the lobby. Are you going to sleep in the lobby? No, it's kind of like a place where lots of things happen. It's a liminal space. You're not going to stay there, right? You're going to check into your room. But with nidra, it's kind of like the lobby of sleep. And if you can cultivate being in that liminal place and being cool with it, which you can then do in those liminal places. I've done a lot. My best yoga nidra is in airports and train stations and on trains. Yeah. In transit, because you have to be careful about the timing, and you have to be not a beginner's practice, but I know folk, we gave our students like specific timed nidras, and some of them be like, yeah, I've got this commute I do, and it's like 22 minutes long. So I do a 17-minute nidra. So when you look on our site, they're numbered, and like, I know I'm going to have 5 minutes to finish and be ready. But basically what you're doing is consciously making friends with the liminal, the threshold space, the transitional space. And that is a very, very profound experience, because then what are we living in right now but a massive transitional moment? Okay. What kind of, and that people are going pretty much freaking out, like they're like, everything's up in the air. I'm like, that's what it is. So reality, this is what we've been practicing for people. So everyone who's been doing yoga is like, oh yeah, this is the liminal space, Uma. I'm like, yep, you know how to be here. Relax.
So you're saying it's helping us to get used to and be comfortable in the ambivalence and ambiguity. And I think that's what the conclusion I came to through writing my book and trying to understand why are we so obsessed with all these crazy things which are destroying us, is because we have this fear of the unpredictable. We have this fear, of not knowing what's going to happen, and we need to control everything.
And that's exactly the case with like patriarchy and women.
Yes,
like they're unpredictable. Why? Because they're on this cyclical pattern all the time, and you never know from one day to the next. They're like the moon. So, and efforts to control life itself, pregnancy, birth, orgasm, menstruation.
I heard last someone was talking on an interview, and they called it womb envy. And then I thought, what a wonderful term, womb envy. I never heard of it before. So I thought
I mean, oh yes. Yeah, I've been a feminist long enough to be like, all of that stuff. It's like, so what's happening right now? And I think yoga therapy is like, any healing modality, and I think we need to be respectful of that this mode, like an Ayurveda and yoga work together, and these are the indigenous healing traditions of South Asia. So sitting here now with my white face and my Indian name, I'm like, which is a married name as well as whatever. I personally need to call myself accountable for my relationship with a tradition that was the British Empire tried to eradicate. The British Empire was no friend of the yogis.
No, of course not.
The British Empire they'll bring them to court and make an entertainment out of them. Queen Victoria had a yoga teacher. You know that.
Yes, I have read.
So, but and they had them in the Elizabeth, but basically we need, as yoga therapists, I think, to be very clear-sighted about the debt that's owed to South Asia and to what happened in India, because we're
Yeah.
We're profiting, running our lives out of these trees. So I'm very keen to, but what we see is when we can honor that and make sure that we're upfront with our referencing and our citation and giving credit where it's due, is that actually with respect and deep humility, we are holding here the tools for transformation. Yeah. And it is our job to ensure that those tools are not in the hands of the oppressors. You know what I mean? Like, you look at commercial commodified yoga studios, I don't work for those people anymore.
No.
I'm not interested in it, because one-to-one, little grassroots, local people being of service to our community, that is a respectful way to take these tools, and they're liberation tools.
Yes.
And they're currently in the hands of the oppressors.
Well,
people buying up studios. I've seen it happen. They buy, and like, so I think it's really,
haven't those studios also fallen? I've heard, like,
some have, but what I see as possible in this extraordinary moment is that the authentic integrity of people like yourself, and maybe all the lovely yoga therapists listening who know the goodness of the work we do, do it with integrity in the service of our community, and we can all thrive together, because we know what we're doing isn't even belong to us.
No, exactly.
You know, like people say, all these techniques that you share, and they're not even mine. I'm just passing them along and liberating them, taking them out of the shackles of some of these very, very patriarchal and capitalist structures that are mostly interested in franchising and sales and profits. And rubber stamping people's certification systems, basically, and running a huge profitable business out of it. And so I invite people to be very honest, but also to use some discernment about which organizations we give our money to. So I am not a member of any yoga organization at all anymore, except people kick me out and I complain about their politics and everything, except for the IAYT, which I think is doing very good work.
Yes.
Honorable, and the Independent Yoga Network. Bless them.
Okay, I don't know them. Yeah, I'm also.
I don't want to have anything to do with the people who are profiting off people's fear that you need this kind of certification or that, and it becomes very elite. Who can get access to these yoga therapy trainings? I worked on yoga therapy trainings for nearly 20 years, you know, looking at who came through and who could afford to do them. And I was like, well, this is interesting, isn't it? We need to democratize it and share it, you know?
Yeah. The whole point is that everyone heals.
Yeah, and everybody deserves access to quality work of yoga therapy in a way that suits them. There'll be a way for everyone. So I see the proliferation of really like grassroots, small scale, community rooted healers, yoga therapists is really positive. You know, so many people, like, you know, if they're fortunate enough, like set up a little studio in their garden, or I know I've worked in my bus sometimes, you know, like and you bring it to the people.
Yeah. Wow. Lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, Uma, is there anything you want to talk about before we end? So I think you want to mention your beautiful new book, which is coming out, or it's already out. Yoga Nidra.
Well, there's 2 Yoga Nidra books. There's this one, which is Yoga Nidra Made Easy. Yeah.
Wow.
Which has just come out. It was been published by Hay House. It's Yoga Nidra Made Easy, deep relaxation practices to improve sleep.
Wow, well done.
Relieve stress and boost energy and creativity. And it's a radical book with some wonderful illustrations by my dear friend Shivani Mata. Look at these. They're just so beautiful. Look, isn't she gorgeous? All of these lovely.
Oh, wow. Gorgeous.
And it's full of poems, and you get 44 with the book, free audio tracks. 22 in my voice, and 22 in my husband's lovely baritone voice. And so you can go to the Yoga Nidra network, and when you get the book, and you can get hold of the audio tracks. So that's good. And there'll be a new book called Nidra Shakti, which is an insight. This is a relatively small, but it's mainstream.
Yes. Mainstream. So it's easy to read.
It's funny. It's full of little stories about people, and it's also very exciting. And it teaches you how to do the practice yourself.
Wow.
So you don't need to listen to someone else. So you can do it anywhere. Even when all the internet goes down, you'll be able to do it. So, and that's going to be followed up by another book, which will be about this size. This is Yoni Shakti, which is the Women's Guide to Power and Freedom. And this is currently out of print because of a legal threat. But you can access those teachings of the yoga therapy. It does have a whole chapter on Yoga Nidra, and it has lots of yoga therapy for women's health. But we're currently making that available through this little box, which you can find on the yoganidranetwork.org, which is that has all of the main teachings around the wisdom goddesses.
Yeah, because
hopefully it is a beautiful book. And in October,
sorry, go.
I'll just finish it. In October, we'll be sending to print the Encyclopedia of Yoga Nidra, which is called Nidra Shakti, The Power of Rest.
Okay, and this is coming out in October.
Well, I've been working on this project for 7 years.
Wow.
It's 768 pages long. It's got over 60 different illustrations, including loads of research. Like I was talking about all the really ancient manifestations of Nidra Shakti. Interviews with over 40 marvelous Yoga Nidra practitioners from around the world, including people like Carmini Desai and Richard Miller and all. I interviewed, I mean, it's my work. So it should be out. I don't want to hoist everybody up, but you can pre-order it on yoganidranetwork.org, and that will help us pay for the printing, because there was a big paper shortage during the pandemic, and so it's become extremely expensive to print books.
Oh wow.
Yes, so that will be coming out. It'll definitely be out. The plan is there, but it's wonderful. But that's the little one is mainstream, and the big one, which is fat, is really for yoga therapists and yoga teacher trainers and people who love Yoga Nidra, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. Oh wow, I can't wait to read that. But for me, Yoni Shakti was amazing. I still haven't finished it. I'm at 450, so it's also 600 pages.
I say don't read it all at once.
I like to go, no, exactly. And I like to go with the phases. So I feel like I'm not reading menopause until I'm in menopause.
And that's what it's called. It's called it was like a lifetime companion. Was one of the subtitles that we didn't use, but the idea would companion you through life.
Yes, yeah.
The way that yoga does, it's like your friend for life.
Yeah. I felt like you were there with me, sitting here talking. Oh, nice, yeah. So I love that book, and I would recommend it to everyone listening. Yoni Shakti, because it is a woman's guide to power and freedom through yoga and tantra.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was really good. I loved it. And I did go to one of your immersions or workshop on the weekend in Amsterdam, and we were lying down doing yoga nidras. In the beginning, I had a lot of resistance. I was like, I want to listen to her talk. But then in the end, I was just waiting for the yoga nidras,
Was that when we went to the Vondelkerk?
Yeah, in the church. Yeah, it was delicious.
Those were magical events.
Yes.
I love them. I have to say, I did almost lose my voice. We had to sit on the table in the end because the acoustics in there was but it's so beautiful. Yeah, maybe we'll return, and we did run. They're lovely, but those immersion courses, you can get them online. We have a lot of online versions. It's not the same as being in the church with everybody, but it was
very chocolate.
We had it. And lovely Suze Ratara of Global Flow organized it. She's just wonderful. So yes, those days might return, get magical gatherings, but here we are, gathered here, sharing that wisdom with everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to say? I mean, I'll put all your links up in the show notes. People can find you.
I just want to encourage people to really realize that yoga therapy is such a treasure, that Yoga Nidra is such a treasure, and that all these treasures are sort of within. And so I think I just want to really support and affirm that I believe what you're doing and what everybody who's listening in is doing is we're really working for the good. And so we need to rest. We need to be rested. My preparation for my yoga. So be rested when you show up for your clients, and then they will believe you when you tell them that they need to rest.
Yes, it's like
because they'll feel it.
Yeah, it's like the story.
Don't show up tired.
No. Yeah, you embody the practice.
Yeah.
That's how you teach. There's Gandhi. One time, a mother and her son went to Gandhi, and the son was very little, but he always wanted sugar. And she said, please tell my son not to eat sugar, Gandhi. And he was like, come back in 1 month, because he'd been eating a lot of sugar for the past time. He knew he couldn't convince the child. So when she came back 1 month later with her son, he just said, don't eat sugar. And she's like, why did you need 1 month to say that? He said, because I had to do the practice first before it could have an effect.
Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful, because then what you do is you feel it. And if you're a rested being holding a space for other beings to rest, they'll feel this unstoppable creativity and energy and healing. And then they'll feel that rising within them.
It's much stronger.
It's a transmission, basically. Nothing that's to do with you. You're just tapping into the rested vibe of the planet. Mother Earth rests.
Yeah.
She rests. I'm here with the bears. They're the kings and queens of rest.
Yeah, Uma is in Canada. Where are you in Canada?
I'm in Squamish, which is in British Columbia on the Pacific Northwest coast, north of Vancouver.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, my love. Thank you so much. It's been a delight to talk to you, and I'm really looking forward to connecting with your book, actually.
Okay. Yes, me too. It's also been a long journey, but not 7 years. It's been 3.5 years. It's been the longest project I've ever done. So it was a big teacher in patience and getting over self-sabotage.
Oh, it takes a long time. Writing books is a thing, but it's good to have that material out there. So I'm really delighted and to have had this opportunity to talk with you.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Have a wonderful, wonderful day and lovely meeting.
I will.
Yeah. Will you send me a link of a good yoga therapy, yoga nidra that we can give to the listeners?
Oh, yes.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I'll do that right now, actually, before I disappear, before it goes from my head.
Or I can send you a text. That'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah?
To remind me, because I've got to jump into this other meeting now, so I might need to go and have a quick wee. All right, my love, but that would be nice. So one of the free ones, they can go have a listen to it. Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
All right, my love. Bye, darling. Bye. Go well.
So thank you everyone for staying to the end of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I really love doing these talks with these amazing people. And if you want to know more, just take a look in the show notes. There's plenty of links and ways to connect with either the guest or myself. If you want to work with us or find out more about us, just check out the information in the show notes. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend or week, and you'll be hearing from me next week. Bye.